Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by the nation's favourite 4K dish, Josh Brown.
Hello!
And we thought we'd come to you potentially before you make a crazy purchase this weekend, because all sorts of deals are dropping around the world, mainly in the West. And as two of the biggest idiots in the office that have bought in to all the 4K, PS4 Pro, Xbox One X type business, we just thought we'd talk about it because we've lived with these half-step consoles for a good while now, Josh a little bit more than me. And I think that there's nothing better than just some candid general thoughts on the reality of these half-step systems and whether they're worth it considering the price tag, and whether you would give in to, you know, like big chunks being taken off that price tag to get you in. Because Lord knows I've given into this thing
this is
2 years in a row.
I feel like every so often, either I come to Scott or Scott comes to me with this mad decision that we're going to impulse buy something that we probably don't really need.
Spec Ops the line.
And then we go back and forward on it for about 2 weeks, and then we do buy it, and then we come in the next day and we ask, was it worth it? And we've just essentially decided to do that on camera so you guys don't have to make any mistakes that we might have made.
We also can't be the only people who do this.
No.
I imagine that, because the thing is, when Sony initially announced the PS4 Pro, I did a video, you can go back and watch it, where I was just like, we don't need this. And my whole point of that was that I wanted them to prioritize the games. I didn't think that they were doing enough back in, I think it was 2015 when they first mentioned it.
Yeah.
Maybe 16. They weren't necessarily doing enough with their first party output, and I was like, why the hell are you making this system that it seems to be designed to just fix like bugs and glitches and the various problems that many third party developers were having with their games, as opposed to focusing on your first party output. And I would still stand by that for the most part, in terms of the fact that, you know, before we had this amazing first party lineup that we now have, God of War, Persona 5, or whatever. You know, I think that, like, now that that's out the way, I then went back and I only got a Pro last year, and I got an Xbox One X yesterday. And so, like, my whole thing with this stuff has been because you got them way more earlier than me.
Yeah, I got mine in early 2017, I think. I haven't got an X, I've only got a Pro, so that's the point of view I'm coming from. Yes.
But like the opening sort of question, overall framing of this video is, do we think that these half-step systems are worth it? Because I think we come down on different sides for this.
For me, they are absolutely worth it in the long run, right? I have a completely different question as to whether or not you should buy one right now, but in the long run, I really do think that they've sort of revitalized this generation and allowed it to keep up with, like, you know, current technological trends and stuff. And I absolutely adore my PlayStation 4 Pro. I use it all the time. I think not only is it a great machine for showing off, for instance, Sony first-party titles, like their games look gorgeous anyway, but they look even better on the PlayStation 4 Pro when you have like a nice 4K television. But for me, the biggest sort of, you know, strengths of the console are the little things that I didn't really care about, like the faster download speeds, the bigger hard drive, which obviously you can, you know, import in an older machine, but I'm an idiot and I can't do that. So it's stuff like that, like the shorter loading times, all of those little things add up overall on top of the bigger things that makes it just, I love it, Scott. I really, really like it, and I will buy another half step next generation.
Oh, see, so for me, the way I come down on it was I don't see it. I don't see the massive change, and I think that is because if you look at something like God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, and Red Dead 2 is being held up as this flagship example of, oh my god, graphical quality on the Xbox One X, and it does have a whole bunch of background detail that isn't there on the base systems. But for the most part, unless you have them side by side, I honestly don't think that it's massively worth it. And this is coming from someone who's invested close to £1,000 in total on both systems, and then the 4K TV as well. There's obviously a change if you had them side by side, but like I said, if you're going from, like I said, God of War or Horizon or Uncharted 4, these are phenomenal looking games on the base PS4, and developers for the most part have got used to how to use that technology in the first place. So when you sort of like quadruple the resolution, for them, there's not many places to put that extra horsepower, so it's like, well, there's a bunch of background detail that wasn't there before, but even in that case, like I said, there's only a handful of games that have a demonstrable difference between the two. Like, for me, it's not smacking me in the face like, oh my god, it's night and day.
Yes.
Like, the frame rate is. Sometimes some games will support, we can talk about, there are some specific stuff we're going to get to in terms of the differences, categories to sort of cover in terms of the difference between the original consoles and the half-step stuff. Frame rate is one of the biggest ones, but some games will let you pick between quality and performance, which is something that I don't like, because I want it to just do the best thing. I don't want to pick. The whole point I'm playing on consoles is because I want it to give me the best streamlined thing. And so I'm in performance mode, getting my 60 FPS, going like, well, that could look better, and I don't know. Then I restart the game in quality mode, and I'm like, well, it could be in 60 FPS.
Sometimes
it's a nightmare.
Sometimes I come into these videos, and I know that we're going to disagree. They're entirely set up for us to disagree, but sometimes I think there's a point that we will both be able to come together on. And I really thought the ability to choose between performance or, you know, the way a game looks would be one of those, because I love that, especially in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which had a lot of bugs bugs and glitches, at least at launch. And the frame rate kind of tanked in a few areas. The ability for me to choose and prioritize a stable frame rate over, core visuals, for me was an absolute joy, because when gamers are a varied breed, and when it comes to what we like, it's either the fidelity and the resolution and stuff like that, or it's a solid frame rate. Like 60 frames per second has been a kind of an elusive mistress on the current gen consoles, especially on the base on the base ones. And being able to finally achieve that, yes, you have to pick. It's not great, but I don't really think it's sort of. I'm someone who constantly goes into the menus of my television and starts messing around with all the colors and like the black levels and stuff like that.
It's not dark enough, Josh.
But when it comes to sort of the choice between performance or graphics, I think it is pretty straightforward. Like, I don't think...
it's one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it would be something that you would have to sort of like constantly reboot your game and try to check out which I prefer. I think if you if you like a more stable frame rate over the way a game looks.
I think, true. I think it's genre dependent. Playing something like Forza Horizon 4 in the performance mode, like that game is just liquid butter. I mean, anything that is a racing game or a fighting game or whatever, you're going to want to prioritize responsiveness. And like I said, the game itself plays into racing games. You want them to be as smooth as possible. But like you said, it's easy. You're picking between one or the other. But that just activates the part of my brain in an RPG where I can go one of two paths. I want to see what's down both, to be honest. And it won't let me do both. So I'm still picking. And like I said, at the core of it, the reason that I'm a console gamer and not a PC gamer is because I want the streamlined experience delivered to me. And so as much as I totally agree with you, load times are better, more storage, I think that those are just quality of life improvements that for me weren't really at the forefront of the marketing. They weren't saying like, hey, by the way, we're going to make all your existing game collections feel better overall and perform better. That wasn't really at the forefront of it, so I think that's a massive positive. But in terms of for me, they still haven't got there yet in terms of it's 4K visuals or it's 60 FPS. Some games get both, but it's very rare. I wanted to talk about the Xbox One or the Xbox Enhanced stuff, because the Pro has a list of all the games that receive notable improvements if you play on Pro. Something that stuck out to me is that some games like Abzu will render more fish in the background. Like some games have actual gameplay differences or in-engine differences, whereas some other ones it just frees up the frame rate, or there's a better the resolution in general is obviously crisper. Where have you come down on that stuff? Because some backwards compatible stuff has a massive uptick, like Fallout 3 renders at 9 times the resolution or something.
Yeah.
And Mass Effect 1, if you play it on Xbox, it runs completely smoothly, beautiful game. But then some stuff is slightly shinier, and that's it.
I do think the Xbox has an edge in that regard, but I don't think it's a huge one. I think it's nice to have. I think it's nice to go back to those old games and have them enhanced. I think it was a winning trick when they announced that the original sort of Gears of War trilogy was played, looked and played better on Xbox One X. That was a cool way to tackle it. And the PlayStation has a boost mode, and it sort of helps. But it's not a great kind of addition. It's I like that it's there. It helps the performance in some games, but it's not a total kind of blanket thing. For me, they're nice features. They're not what I come to the Pro for, though. I like that they're there, but they're not a unique selling point. I like that they're trying to put the effort into keeping older games relevant. Microsoft, especially with the backwards compatibility. But again, I don't know whether I would buy it just for that. I wouldn't do what you did anyway, because I want to tell you guys, when Scott Telford was trying to figure out whether or not he should buy an Xbox One X, what were the games you were talking about, Scott?
Brutal Legend.
Brutal Legend.
But it wasn't for those two. My whole point was legacy. My whole point was that I wanted a system that would honor the legacy of everything that I've bought on my Xbox, because with the amount of stuff that Game Pass gives you, and I've already bought most of those games over time anyway, I want a system that honors the legacy of content that I have. And I mean that in regards to the fact that I have a launch Xbox One, or I did, which is a dog now. That thing, it's maybe only mine, but it'll be other people's that have had them for that long. The menus are sluggish as hell. The actual general usability of it is just on the floor. I can't rely on it to boot games without kicking me back to the dashboard. So that was one of the things that incentivized me, was just I already didn't have that much space on it to hold all this stuff together. And I just want a system that just streamlines everything, plays everything nice and beautifully, up-reses it and 4Ks it where possible, frees up the frame rate and whatever. And I was like, for me, it was a legacy purchase, because I can play original Xbox games and 360 games and the Xbox One stuff and the Game Pass stuff, and it was just all in one place. And that was for me, that's what Xbox are selling you now. And so my Xbox One from 2013 didn't do that anymore. So that was why I gave into that. But it was also under the sort of curiosity of, what does Jedi Academy look like in 4K? What does Brutal Legend, Spec Ops, Vanquish, what do all those games look like when they're given unlimited horsepower, unlimited power? Can they just run in these in 60 FPS and whatever? So it's weird, because I think that they sell a lot of these systems on the back of the first-party offerings and the new stuff and the big bombastic stuff, and I like that. But for me, they're legacy purchases. Like the Pro doesn't do this very well. It's not backwards compatible. They'll release an HD version of something, but in Xbox, you can put an old disc in, and hey, you're playing this up-res version of it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a really good thing.
I agree in that. I think both consoles have. Their winning thing is that there's not just one sort of feature you buy them for. At least I don't think either of us did. It's sort of a cumulative thing of, games look better, but you have all of these, peripheral features as well. And one of the biggest ones for me with the Pro was the fact that VR games played better as well.
Yes.
Like, I had a VR before I had a Pro, and it was still a great experience, but, things were a bit blurry. I couldn't often read some of the text. But when I upgraded to the Pro, that just gave that a new lease of life, and it made those games more enjoyable. So that was another additive thing on top of everything else. And I do think you have to fold everything in. You have to look at everything before you're making a purchase. But even then, Scott, I wouldn't be buying one now, let me tell you that. I'm pleased that I bought one in 2017, but looking at the landscape now, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the new systems are coming next year. I'm not going out there buying another PS4 Pro or whatever. I think, like I said, my justification for Xbox was because my Xbox was failing, and I felt like I had so much stuff ready to go, so many old gems. Because I used to be a huge 360 fan in the last generation. I had so much stuff ready to go, so many things they keep adding to Game Pass, or so many things that they make backwards compatible that I just couldn't play, or my Xbox would just die trying to load. And I was like, I'm missing out on this stuff, and I'm not going to sit here for another year waiting for Microsoft to pull their finger out when I can go and get one for a discounted price. I literally only got it because it was on the Black Friday deal. But I do think it brings about an interesting conversation around how they've marketed these systems and the necessity of them based on the fact that now the coders have become more proficient with the original systems, things like Uncharted 4, Sea of Thieves, Halo, Gears, whatever, all look absolutely gorgeous on their base versions, providing you have a working console from 2013 or 2014.
Yeah.
That was the thing that stood out to me.
The big thing for me is if you have a 4K television, whether it's a really good one or, a more budget one, I currently have a more budget one, I think it is worth getting an updated console just for that, just to get the most out of that experience.
I think if you're halfway there,
yes,
you've
that's
got the TV,
it.
you're
Yeah,
halfway invested.
that's exactly it. My biggest question is, though, when it comes to the next generation, the rumors at the moment are that the higher end versions, these mid-step consoles, are actually going to be there at launch. Then you have a regular version there at launch as well. So you have a higher end machine that you can buy, or you have the regular version. What will you be buying?
Oh, Jesus. I don't know if I've been paid on that week. I'll probably just punt for it. To be honest, I'm probably going to trade this stuff in. It's all going to depend on feature sets, and depends how much exclusive features are on the new system, which they haven't fully outlined yet. We've got some stuff for the PS5. I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll have something new that'll blow us all away. At this point in gaming history, I think we're at the point of diminishing returns. So I think that we've arrived at 4K, we've arrived at photorealistic visuals and facial animation and whatever. So it's a case of refining that stuff. It's like where cinema's kind of stuck at the minute, where it's like, well, we can crank the frame rate up, and everyone's like, it looks weird now.
I don't know, man. I remember like 10 years ago, we were looking at games like Gears of War 1, and we were thinking, that's the best it's ever going to be. That's photorealistic graphics. It's not getting better than this. Why bother?
I know, and it's like, and that's the whole thing. It's just sort of like people who have no faith in the future at all, that I can't get much better, but the avenue that they're going down is VR and stuff like that. I do have faith that they can make things better, but I think in terms of what can a new system offer us, it was telling that this past generation it was just social features, like better graphics and social media interaction, and that was kind of it.
Yes, I would argue though that I think that is partly because even with these mid-gen refreshes in mind, the consoles that came out in 2013, because they were trying to be on the cheaper end, were already underpowered. Like this was a worry even back at the time. Like there were PCs back then that were doing way better things than what those machines were doing. And I'm not saying that they're bad or anything. They still made for great looking games, but it felt like even then we were on like kind of the back foot, where hopefully this next generation won't be doing that.
One of the very last things I wanted to quickly address is the actual reality of the way that these things do 4K, because only a fraction of titles on the Pro, and more so on the Xbox One X, actually run in native 4K, which means the game is rendering in 4K. The vast majority of them across the board upscale to 4K, which might be, well, it's not a deal breaker for me. I still kind of see the resolution changes, but I think if you've got that niggling sort of feeling inside you where it's like, well, I'm putting the money down on this 4K system, only to get home and realize that you're actually just playing something that has been like retrofitted or has been upscaled to fit. The native stuff tends to be first party things. On PS4 Pro it's Naughty Dog's games, or on Xbox it's Halo and Gears. And I think that they are worth it to see what they've done. Something like Forza is absolutely gorgeous. Forza Horizon. I think Forza Horizon surpassed Burnout now.
I think it might have,
I never used to say that, but I think it's finally got there. And so for me, those things stand out as being, it lives up to the 4K promise.
Yeah.
How have you found that overall stuff? Because even the boost mode that you mentioned, it took Sony like a year to even put that in.
It's one of those things where you can look at it, you can just say, well, this isn't proper 4K, this is checkerboarding 4K, this is native 4K, but at the same time, it does such a good job of upscaling to that level anyway, that it is a visual boost and it does look very good, and you're not going to notice the minute details unless you're very close and you've got a really big telly, like over 65 inches. I think...
55 for me.
Yeah, 55 for me. I think if you do have, those conditions, then it probably might be a worry, but I think to the average consumer, they will just notice a bump in visual quality and hopefully won't be worried about like the individual differences.
Yeah, and one other tiny thing, it's a stick on as an addendum, is that the Xbox One X plays 4K Blu-rays and the Pro doesn't, which is something that annoyed me when I got my Pro, because I just assumed that it would, but it didn't. The Xbox One X does actually support 4K Blu-rays, which is one of the only, I don't know, it's something worth remembering if you're going in and picking one of the two.
Again, you know what, that almost swayed me to the X last year, but now that I know the next PlayStation, the next Xbox will have them in as standard, that is also a reason for me to wait a little bit.
Can you hold back for another year not playing Brutal Legend in 4K?
You know what? I'll buy one now, you know what I mean? I'm going to get it up. Amazon.com.
I think you might as well. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below, the general idea of half-step systems and whether you've bought in this year, last year, or whenever. For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time.
Bye.